Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Spirit Matters, your daily Bhakti Center podcast, where we talk about spiritual subject matters, specifically those found in the ancient yogic text, the Bhagavad Gita. And we talk about how to bring these ancient spiritual truths into our daily lived lives and really get the practical lessons from them. We are here with our live studio audience and my co-host Achyuta Gopi. How are you doing this morning, Achyuta?
Blessed.
Yes.
Blessed and invigorated. It is a good day.
Yes. I also feel that way. I feel like it's a good day and I had a nice restful 3-day weekend. It was a holiday here. So it was like the last hurrah of summer. And it actually was because yesterday was quite hot. And then today it's like it's the fall. It's raining.
I mean, not quite. It's just, yeah. Never mind. I was trying.
You're trying. We are continuing our talk about the soul and the Bhagavad Gita, and it seems like we are at verse 26, 7, something like that. So,
Yeah.
Achyuta, please take us away.
So, 26.
Okay.
Krishna is continuing to speak to Arjuna. If, however, you think that the soul, or the symptoms of life, will always be born and die forever, you still have no reason to lament, O mighty armed. One who has taken his birth is sure to die, and after death one is sure to take birth again. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament. All created beings are unmanifest in their beginning, manifest in their interim state, and unmanifest again when annihilated. So what need is there for lamentation? I feel like it's like when you talk to a kid
Mm,
and they're really sad that the sun set,
mm,
and you're trying to encourage them like, don't cry, like, don't freak out, the sun's gonna rise again, and they're like, but it's gone. And I feel like this is kind of how Krishna is speaking to Arjuna here on this
mm,
battlefield. He's like, but you know this, you
mm,
know this is not even the first lives that we've lived. You
mm,
know that there are others. Arjuna, he has celestial parentage.
mm,
He knows that the world is not just work in this little like box that we've tried to stuff everything into. He knows that things are more inconceivable than that.
mm,
And I really like how he continuously calls him, "O mighty armed, O best of the
mm,
Bharatas, O great hero, O conqueror of wealth, O conqueror of the enemies, O vanquisher of foes." All of
mm.
these things that he's reminding him of. And I feel like this is Krishna with us every day. Like he's like, "Oh, my friend, do you remember how amazing you are?" And every day we're like, "No, I don't.
Mm.
Let me stay in my mediocrity."
I think it's really interesting just how direct Krishna is. Like he's just so direct. And I really appreciate that because obviously there's a time and place for when to be this direct. Like if we think of our practical, lives and talking to people and people coming with their problems and their issues and etc. So obviously there's like a correct time when to be direct. But at least like when I'm with my friends and stuff like that, um, it's just so simple, it's simple. It's like it's a simple truth that we tend to want to forget, we tend to want to not pay attention to, and there's so much distress, around this simple truth, which is, Krishna is saying it like so plainly here that one who has taken birth is sure to die, and after death one is sure to take birth again. And it's just like, okay, this is the very simple truth, and therefore we have duties in this life, we have things that we have to do, etc. Obviously this is a very specific situation with Arjuna, but this idea, it's and the reason I'm bringing it up is just because this idea of like happiness and getting what's going to finally make me happy in this life, it's like, how is that happiness of getting the thing, whatever the thing is, how is that going to hold up, against this, right? Because is happiness getting a car? Is happiness getting I don't know, like an apartment? Is happiness getting a house? Like, what is it exactly? And so it really starts to make you question what I guess you had valued as important, or what was going to make you happy, versus like this blatant simple truth that Krishna's like, look, this is the situation, this is what's going to happen, and it's not going to change, it's not going to change. And people are really, myself included, like there's a lot of fear around it, which is interesting. There's a lot of fear and hush hush and all of this stuff in our present society, and it's interesting because it's almost like we don't want to face it you know
It's exactly, we don't want to face it. And when people have come to me with the idea of like, I prayed to Krishna so hard, why did Krishna take my grandma away from me?
mm,
And the first question that I ask is actually like, okay, what kind of advice do you want?
mm,
Do you want the straight shot, or do you want me to just say I'm really sorry? Like, do
mm,
you actually want an answer to the question, or you just want somebody to commiserate with? Because I'm really sorry for that loss.
mm,
And here, Arjuna has already said, he's like, that seventh verse, he's like, I need you to tell me for certain, real talk, circa 5,000 years ago, I need you to actually give me the simple, honest, direct truth. Don't beat around the bush, Krishna. Don't give me your cryptic oracle answers that you like to give people. Don't be mysterious. Just tell me straight what's happening. And so when people tell me they actually want to hear it, I go, okay, well, who is it that you know that lives forever?
mm,
And they have to say, well, no one. And so I'm like, well, then, what is it that your grandmother wanted the most
mm,
if it wasn't sudden? And they were saying, well, she was a real big devotee of Krishna. She just wanted to be with Krishna. And I was like, okay, so then what if your prayers,
mm,
then you've now dragged her back into this material situation when all she wanted to do was be with Krishna? How do we think that would actually make your grandmother feel? I'm like, well, not so great. I'm like, so then what is it that we want? I
mm,
want what I want. I want the comfort of
mm,
grandma still being here. And then we have to look at how we are now pushing and projecting all of our wants and desires onto everybody else. It now doesn't matter what grandma wants. It doesn't
mm,
matter if grandma thinks she's lived a full life and she has now reached a point of understanding where the soul understands so much more than this encased body is gonna understand. There's totally different perspective, but we're still back on, but I want the comfort of
mm,
grandma. Forget what grandma wants and needs. It's about
mm,
me. And when
mm,
we really start thinking about that, it kind of turns that whole thing on its head of us being mad at Krishna. Why'd you take my grandma? Krishna's like, what if your grandma's wish was to be spiritually back here? And how do we get the ultimate victory to be this occasion where it's like, oh my God, this is the most horrible thing that's ever happened? Like, but who do we know? No one can live forever. And this is what Krishna's telling Arjuna. He's like, there's nobody that lives forever.
mm,
Not one person.
mm. I love that you put it into this context, and I'm also seeing it here in the chat of like, well, what about me? What about me?
Yes, it's what about us?
Or what about us? And that's what it always comes down to. Like that's what it always comes down to. Like Dana is saying, sometimes the hard part is that I am left here. And so it's like this feeling of like, well, what about me? Like why did grandma have to leave, or why did this other person have to leave? What about me? And I think that we speak about this so much, and it's obviously going to come out in Bhagavad Gita. But do we actually believe that my relationship with Krishna is transcendent to all of that, right? Like, do I actually believe that that's actually the relationship that's going to feed my soul, that that's actually what's going to bring me comfort? Because if I don't believe that, then there is a lot of like, well, what about me? I need people, I need this, I need my partner, I need my markers of success, I need all of these things. And that's why we start with these examples are kind of intense, right? Like we're talking about like someone leaving their body, but we start like more small than that. It's like, can I be okay if my job or career didn't go the way that it was supposed to, you know? Or like, can I be okay if, you know, daddy takes away the lollipop? Like, am I gonna be okay? You know? And it's like, yeah, I think I'm gonna be okay, you know? But we convince ourselves, and there's a lot of mental self-talk of like, no, this is the end of the world. I lost my job, it's the end of the world. I can't believe Krishna did this to me, you know? Daddy took away the lollipop, it's the end of the world. Can't believe Krishna did this to me. You know, grandma left body, Krishna is evil. He did this to me. How could he let this happen? And then that's when we start to like go back into that mentality of like, well, what about me? You know, who's going to take care of me? I have to look out for myself because I don't know what Krishna's doing, but I don't know.
And you know, Krishna, in saying lamentation, he's not saying don't be disappointed by the things that happen.
Yeah.
Even Krishna shows disappointment by things that happen. What he's saying is don't let it rock you so much to your core that now you are unable to function.
Yeah.
Don't let the grief overtake you to the
Hmm.
point where now you want to give up doing what you actually must do, what is correct for you to do
Hmm.
to protect those people around you that are worthy of your protection, that are worthy of your thoughts and your compassion. Don't be so compassionate that now you've lost all sense of where to place that compassion, where to
Hmm.
place your actions. So it's not that we should just be unaffected by it all. We're going to be affected. We're going to be disappointed when people leave their bodies. Absolutely. But it shouldn't rock us so much to the core where we now think that's it. I hate Krishna and I hate
Hmm.
religions because grandma died.
Hmm.
And I'm like, unfortunately, we too are also gonna die. Like no one lives forever. And
Hmm.
it's part of the soul experience, not even just a human experience. It's part of a soul experience to have these attachments and to actually lament over the loss of them. Because
Hmm.
juxtaposed to this, we have saints who have written songs that say, without the association of those people who have reminded me of Krishna,
Hmm.
I feel like I want to smash my head against rocks and jump into blazing fire because I'm bereft of their association.
Hmm.
So it's not, you know, juxtaposed to that, we still have this. Yes, there's going to be this deep crater.
Hmm.
You're going to feel that cavern of sadness.
Hmm.
But the difference is we don't let it shake our trust in Krishna. We
Hmm.
are able to say, Krishna, I trust you. I have faith in you, and this is not the end for anyone.
Hmm. And it's really interesting because when we get into later chapters in Bhagavad Gita, we'll talk about a lot of the like super cool things. But one spoiler alert, I won't spoil it so much, but one spoiler alert is that, and I think when you step back objectively and look at this principle, it makes a lot of sense. It's like, okay, we're accepting the fact that people are going to leave their bodies, that I myself am going to leave my body at some point. And so what is the consciousness that I am wanting to have when I leave my body? What is the consciousness that I'm wanting grandma to have when she leaves her body? Do I want her to be scared and afraid and cynical and bitter and regretful and angry at God and like, just all of the, do I want to feel that way, And it's like when I think about this, I'm like, no, I don't want to feel that way when I'm leaving this body. I don't want to be mad and angry at Krishna. I don't want to be bitter at the world and at people and going through all my regrets of everything that I could have done different and all this stuff. It's like, no. And so part of this bhakti practice is really taking life as a preparatory time to situate our consciousness in a way where I am not full of fear and anxiety at the time of movement out of this body into my next destination. And it's so important actually, because this verse, it's later in the Gita, Krishna is like, for one who thinks of me at this time, it's like you can achieve me. And it's like it seems almost very simple, but it's like, okay, well, I'll just die and be like Krishna, and then boop, I achieved Krishna. It's like, no, it's not
Yeah.
like that. Because it's as we know, it's the the samskaras or the impressions on their mind are so intense. Like they're so intense. Those emotions and those feelings are so intense that it actually takes a lot of practice and faith to be like, I am really trusting you, Krishna. I'm really trusting you, even though this is the scariest moment of my life.
And I like that you brought that up, because that is one of my favorite things that Arjuna asks. He's like, okay, now that you've said all this stuff, now for a person who knows all this, the knower of all of these things, how does he walk? How does he talk? How does he sit? How does he act? How do they what do they do in order to be as fearless as you're saying people should be?
Mm,
Because Arjuna is humbly submitting himself to be in this position of like, I am not fear.
mm,
I'm the opposite of fearless right now. Even more than fearful, I'm just like, I'm the complete opposite of this confident, fearless warrior that you keep reminding me that I should be.
mm,
And Krishna is so patient with it all. So just really sweet and patient with him. Like, but you know this, and you're my friend. And at the end of your life, if all you remember is that you are my friend, I
mm,
guarantee you it'll be enough. Even if you don't understand all the workings of this material world, even if you don't even remember all of the workings of yourself and every the self and the nature of the soul and all of the things that I've outlined, if you only remember that you are my friend,
mm,
it'll be enough. And you're right, it is simple. It's not easy, but it's that simple. And we almost feel like it's a little too good to be true. Like, can it really be that simple? It actually is that simple. We do tend to overcomplicate things, and like you said, when the mind gets involved,
mm,
it's convinced that it can't be that simple.
mm, mm. It's interesting because the idea of loss seems to be like something that people, myself included, it's very scary. You know, there's, I can't remember, I'm gonna butcher this or where it comes from. I know it's somewhere in the Vedas, but this idea that like sticks in the ocean are coming together over some time, and then after some time they'll just come apart and drift off. And they're saying that this is how our connections are in the material world with people. And I think that that's a really interesting training ground in a sense, because as relationships and people come into our friendships, you know, think about all of the friendships that you don't have anymore, like maybe 20 years ago or 10 years ago. It's like, yeah, I'm not really friends with that person anymore. I don't know what happened. It kind of just like we just drifted away. They moved there, I'm here, like something happened, whatever. And it's like, this is how life is in a sense. Like people come into your life and they're there for a period of time, and time itself will move them away, whether it be for whatever reason it might be, you know. And I think accepting that is what people have a really, really hard time with, of just like, it's almost like separation anxiety, because there's a fear of ultimately being alone. And
Yeah.
that fear is arising from not having enough surrender and faith and trust. You know, I'm talking about myself here, that I'm not alone, that Krishna is actually here with me, you know, that Krishna's like been there the whole time. We always give this image of like me facing this way and Krishna's like, hello, like I'm here. And you're like, no, I don't believe
I
you.
know. It's like two little birds in one tree. And Krishna's like,
Yeah.
I've just been tweet, tweet, hello. And then we're like, no, I don't know. I don't see you. And why aren't you here? It's like, but I am right here. I can't believe it. Just wish Krishna would be here beside me. It's like, I'm right here. So mysterious. Can never figure it out. He just left me alone forever. But yeah, like you said, there's that fear that we will be alone, but we didn't start off alone.
Mm,
We were never alone.
mm,
We are not going to end up alone, because we have never, at any time, never was there a time when we were alone. Krishna, the whole crux of that verse, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future will we ever cease to be. Never was there a time when we were ever, ever, ever alone. And somehow or other, through this material conditioning, we convinced ourselves
mm,
that not only were we alone, but we were better off.
mm,
Because if we were left to our own devices, we could rule it all.
mm.
We could control this entire thing. And somehow we thought that that was a good idea. This entire life. between dates, that one little line, which it gets reduced to, is now a practice in me re-brainwashing myself to remember that I don't want to control this whole thing.
Mm,
And I wasn't better off.
mm,
And I totally wasn't alone. And I was way better off before I started convincing myself that I was alone.
mm, mm. And the scary thing is that, like, I see the chat blowing up, like, it's a terrible idea, not a good idea at
Such a
all,
bad
to be better
idea.
off to be on our own. But I think the scary thing is that, like, if you look at society, so much of a lot of social ailments come from this idea that we're better off alone, that we don't need God, we don't need a higher power, we don't need all these ancient texts, we don't need any of that stuff. Like we'll just figure it out ourselves, you
And
know?
then by extension, even each other. Like we've
Yeah.
done a number on ourselves. We don't need God. We don't need spirituality per se. We don't need any rules, no regulations. We don't even need each other. To be honest, like it's like at a moment's notice, we're just ready to cut anybody and everybody out of our lives.
And that's really like
Don't
that's
want to be alone. It's
exactly. It's counter, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like paradoxical.
counterproductive. It's like so counterintuitive, counterproductive, counter everything.
Counterintuitive. That's the word that I was looking for. It's very counterintuitive. And I think that that's it's almost like there's a lot of attention on like the ideals, you know, because the ideals are there. Like if you look at modern woke society, it's like the idealism almost is there of like this is how it should function and this is how it should be. But then when it comes to the actual like, well, what's it going to take for us to get to those ideals? That's where I feel like there's a shut off of like, no, I don't need society. No, I don't need the government telling me what to do. No, I don't need religion telling me what to do. No, I don't need you telling me what to do. I'm just going to do it on my own. And it's like,
It's like, what are you gonna do on your own? Do what? What are you gonna do?
hmm.
Like we can't do anything on our own. Lane is rightly saying, Lane needs everyone, and I appreciate that. We need you too, Lane. Happy birthday, by the way.
Happy birthday, Lane. It was like yesterday, I think, right? Or is it today?
Fourth, the fourth.
It was,
I don't know what day today is, but it was the fourth.
I also don't know. Um, but it's really interesting because I think that there's such a vulnerability around saying, I need you, I need people, I need help, I need this, I need that. You know, there's this almost like shield that people put up around that need. And really what it comes down to is the ultimate need of I need Krishna, you know, I need a higher power to help me through this. And the more and more that we turn away from that, basically, you know, and this is said in the Vedas, the more that fear is going to take over, you know, the more we turn away from Krishna, the more that fear is going to be the guiding principle in our life. And so we shouldn't do that.
And these verses, I feel like, have been a little bit, they can get and they have been misconstrued to like feed that detachment, which is just masking our fears, and has given us a reason to become more hard hearted instead of more vulnerable with each other.
Mm,
These verses were meant to bring us to a place of vulnerability where we really talk about the things that we actually do need, and the fact that, yes, I'm going to feel that cavern of emptiness without my people. Now, how do I fix it to trust Krishna and know that this is not the end of this story? To keep reading, to keep turning those pages of life, to keep going, understanding that Krishna has an end goal in mind and he is actually fixing that. And instead, we've spun it on its head, and it's like, and this means that because the soul can never be killed and is always alive, this just feeds our ideas of we should be totally detached from everyone,
mm,
especially our own selves, and
mm,
possibly maybe Krishna,
mm,
unless we are coming with a mind that is filled with pure devotional service.
mm. And I think it's so important that you mentioned that, and we're coming close to the end of our time, but I'll just mention this last point in the purport of verse. I was waiting for us to get into this topic. Into the purport of verse 27, Srila Prabhupada is saying, he's talking about the cycle of birth, right? One has to take birth according to one's activities of life. And after finishing one term of activities, one has to die to take the birth for the next. In this way, one is going through one cycle of birth and death after another without liberation. This cycle of birth and death does not, however, support unnecessary murder, slaughter, and war. But at the same time, violence and war are inevitable factors in human society for keeping law and order. The Battle of Kurukshetra, being the will of the Supreme, was an inevitable event, and to fight for the right cause is the duty of the Kshatriya. And he goes on like this. But I think that that's a really important point, because what you were saying, Achitagopi, it's like when you read, if you're reading some of these things without proper guidance, like it can make you more cynical. It can make you more like, well, if they're saying not to lament for the soul and that the body, you're just going to be reborn in another body, like who cares? Like then nothing means, then everything means nothing, and we might as well just like be crazy and violent and like kill each other, because like whatever. And like the scary I know that sounds like very far-fetched, but the scary thing is that people go there and have gone there. And
Yep.
that's why it's so important to read these texts with proper guidance, with proper support, with proper understanding, as opposed to just like
Mental
mental.
speculation, because the mind, it will just concoct a whole different thing. And meanwhile, Krishna's like, that's not what I said at all. Totally what you said. Got it.
Yeah, and I really love the word that Baldevi used, that one can become apathetic without support and guidance. And it's a really scary place to be, like apathy and indifference, and just kind of like it's the opposite of what Krishna wants, for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Me, these days, I just be plain pathetic, not apathetic.
Oh, me too. Okay, we are running fresh out of time. We're going to hand it over to our lovely Kimberly for some takeaways.
Thank you. So today we're taking away that happiness and distress are a part of life, but don't let it rock you to your core. And that Krishna is always with us. Our friendship is eternal and we're never alone. And that we should read the text with proper guidance and support.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kimberly. Thank you for summing it up so perfectly. Achyuta, what are you walking away with today?
That this doing it on my own thing was a bad idea. I want to get to the root cause of that bad idea, and I need to flip that one around and remind myself that sticking with Krishna is always a good idea.
I love that. I love that. Definitely a bad idea to just be on your own. I remember when I told my friend Jai that I was moving in by myself, like after living the ashram. He was like, "Really?" I was like, "Yeah, like I'll be fine." He was like, "Are you sure?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Are you sure you're gonna be okay with like your mind and just like you and yourself in an apartment?" And I was like, now that you mention it, maybe I should think of an alternative.
It's a trial run.
Maybe just a trial. But the point being that like when we're left to our own devices and when we're just alone a lot of the time, like, we need that support. We need that community. We need teachers, we need guides, and we need Krishna ultimately. And what I'm walking away with is just really trying to remember that I'm actually never alone. That I'm actually never alone, no matter how much I might try to convince myself of that. Like Krishna's always there and he's just waiting for us to turn towards him. So I'm going to walk away with that. Yeah, Baldevi is saying similar. Rather than sink into apathy or sadness, call on Krishna. Give him a chance. Oh, I love that. Give Krishna a chance and learn that you're never alone. Beautiful. Amazing. Thank you all so much for your beautiful presence today, all your wonderful comments. Thank you, Achyuta Gopi. And we will be here tomorrow at 9 a.m. And we will continue with our reading of Bhagavad Gita. Thank you, everyone. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye, folks.